You know Pete well. You were there when this really kind of tipped over and blew up here. Can you explain in somewhat of a condensed manner before we ask you some specific questions, just the evolution of how you perceive the whole Pete Rose saga over the past 25 years? If you're like me, it's probably changed in various points and pockets. Talk to us, Dibs.
I know him even more intimately than that. There was one year where Pete gave me his house in spring training for my family to live in.
Okay.
My apartment fell through. I mean, I've been friends with him since the mid-'80s, and, love him or hate him, he's an amazing guy, and he's kind of a problem to himself. And going back to 88, 89, I had no idea about all the gambling and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, I played half of 88, come back in 89, going to make the team. And you come to spring training, and there's 250 reporters, and you're like, what's going on? They're like, well, he's being investigated for gambling. And, coming from a small town in Connecticut, I really never had the money to gamble. I didn't really understand it. And I didn't know it was like an addiction, a disease, and a compulsion thing with him. And I saw it a lot, and I didn't really notice it. But he would come back from the track and stuff like that and be counting money in the clubhouse and stuff. But from all accounts, everybody always said he was an awful gambler. And I'm like, if you're bad at something and you're one of the greatest baseball players of all time, why would you stick with it? And I guess people tell me it's the juice. It's the excitement of that not knowing whether you're going to win or not win. And I've been around it. I had an ex-brother-in-law that was a compulsive gambler. I've had a lot of people in my life that have gambled, and it drove me nuts. And I even have friends that are professional poker players. And so I've never understood it because I come from a very my dad was a radio guy. We never had a lot of money growing up. I come from 6 kids, so I was never one to just blow money. So I can never understand the concept. But with Pete, and going back to 88, 89, and even to today, he does not get it. He doesn't understand that everything that he's done since he was a player in the major leagues has compromised whether or not people believe the game is on the up and up. And you go to the NBA referees, you go to anybody that's ever done point shaving, you can't allow that in a game.
Yeah, no, because it compromises people's belief that it's authentic. And we hear what Rob Manfred said, and now the case is closed. My question, since you know Pete, what's his reaction going to be to this decision? Basically, that he's out of baseball for life.
He's going to be like he's like a 74-year-old Johnny Manziel. Really? I don't get it. And when you're admitting that you still gamble, Tiki, on baseball, it's mind-numbing because, dude, you've been kicked out of baseball for 26 years, and you're still gambling on baseball. I don't care if it's legal. I don't care if you're gambling with your closest relatives. To sit there and be in front of the commissioner, and he calls you to the carpet and says, listen, we have this information. You not only gambled as a manager, you gambled as a player, and what are you doing with your life right now? And he wants to see Pete grow up and mature. And it's like it's your grandfather. Your grandfather's still gambling. Your grandfather doesn't get this. And it's like that's with Pete. He's still a child at heart, but he's not understanding that you're still compromising. And I don't like the word integrity because, you have casinos that are being, marketed around Major League Baseball. You got DraftKings, all that kind of stuff. But that's not compromising the game. Pete could still be in a position as a hitting coach or an assistant general manager to compromise games. And that's what Rob Manfred's really saying. I think Rob Manfred's a very fair guy. He's a brilliant guy. He's a great lawyer. And he was a tough adversary. I was a player rep when I was in the major leagues, and he's very smart. He was trying to be fair with Pete and give him an honest chance to get back in the game. And Pete just keeps screwing it up. And so, listen, he screwed it up with Bart Giamatti. He screwed it up with Bud Selig, and now he's doing it with Rob Manfred. So he's his own worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's just kind of a screw-up, albeit one with over 4,000 hits. We're talking to Rob, and just an incredible passion for the game. It's Rob Dibble. Dibs with us here on CBS Sports Radio, Tiki and Tierney Show. Two-time All-Star, played for Pete. And you heard that he actually had Pete's home during spring training, so he knows him as well as anybody. Yeah, so we share the same opinion, Dibs. You know, what I said to start the show, it's not Manfred's job to placate us by ending a 25-year debate. His job is to protect the sport, which is what he's doing. Now, I posed, something that I think can help us all move on, and I'm curious where you stand on the actual Hall of Fame issue. I would take Pete Rose. I would take Roger Clemens. I would take Barry Bonds, and I would take the nearest next of kin to Shoeless Joe Jackson. All right, I would enshrine them separately from the conventional one during the summer. If Bob Feller, who as you know was a big adversary of Pete, who of course has since passed away, but those who are detractors and don't believe they don't have to come, that's fine. But put them in with a special ceremony, build a plaque. Put it there for everybody to know. They are ignoring one of the most important chapters in baseball history, and it's not reflecting the sport the way it actually went down.
I couldn't agree with you more. Listen, it's a museum, and it's always been separated from Major League Baseball, and that's what Rob Manfred said in his letter. I'm keeping Pete out of Major League Baseball. I'm not keeping him from the Hall of Fame. And, the Hall of Fame is a museum on the historical significance of Major League Baseball. It was a tourist attraction. The reason the baseball writers have the vote is back in 1938, they wanted to attract tourism to Cooperstown, New York. So I get all that. I've been to the Hall of Fame over 10 times. And, from the old Negro leagues to women playing in baseball to, the Black Sox scandal back in 1919, all of that stuff should be in there. Barry Bonds has to be in there. Roger Clemens has to be in there. Pete has to be in there. And whatever you want to write along with it, because it's not the Hall of Saints. You've got guys in there that were convicted drug felons. Ty Cobb reportedly murdered somebody. It's not the Hall of Saints. So I'm not a judgmental person. I'm not, my job is not to judge people. That's for the hereafter. So for Pete to be in the Hall of Fame just shows what he did as a player. Now, if you want to write what he does as a person, he's a compulsive gambler, he's this, that's your business.
Yeah.
But to me, to not have Barry Bonds and a 7-time MVP and, Roger Clemens, a 7-time, Cy Young Award winner, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a museum. I'm married to a school teacher. How are you supposed to teach kids, what baseball's about if you don't put the best players of all time in there?
Yeah, or history if you're going to whitewash the things, the bad stuff that happened to some of the great leaders of our country who obviously had some bad stuff that they had going on as well. Rob, the question as it pertains to the Hall of Fame, I almost felt like the Hall of Fame wanted the pass from Major League Baseball or the go-ahead from Major League Baseball to make the change. Now that we know that's not going to happen, what will it take for the Baseball Writers Associations of America to change their view on how they're dealing with these controversial Hall of Famers? Because they are Hall of Famers. They're just not in the building yet.
Well, I hate the fact that they have the right to judge. And, these are the same hypocrites that wrote about the saving of baseball with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. They have too much power. And there's even a lot of Hall of Fame writers, Tiki, that I've interviewed that they don't even want the vote anymore because there's a lot of guys that if you have 10 years of covering baseball, you get a right to vote on the Hall of Fame. Guys you may not have even, seen play. There's a lot of guys that didn't want to vote Jim Rice into the Hall of Fame and never saw him play. I grew up here in Connecticut watching Jim Rice. He was one of the most feared hitters that ever played the game, yet there are people that were talking about his on-base percentage on the road was too low to get in the Hall. It was just it's ridiculousness with sabermetrics. And everything has its place. And so I think you need to change the voting according to time. And you need to, if Vin Scully doesn't have a vote and Bob Costas doesn't have a vote, that's just ridiculous. These are guys that are historians of baseball. Tim Kirchin, those are the kind of people that should be voting on Hall of Famers because they've seen them all and they can judge them fairly. So again, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, you may not like what they are as people, but they should be at the top of the list going into the Hall of Fame. And I interviewed Bob Feller, at least a dozen times over a 20-year period. And he, God bless him, fought in World War II, Korea, all that stuff. But again, he was one of those old, bitter, ball players from the 40s and 50s that don't understand the significance of the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is bigger than baseball. The Hall of Fame attracts new people, new generations to the game of baseball. You go to the Hall of Fame, and now you're like, God, I got to watch the Yankees play. I got to watch the Mets play. I got to watch, the Arizona Diamondbacks play because of them winning in 2001 after 9/11. It all has its place in the history of this country. So for the bottom, line in Pete Rose, put him in there, put a plaque up there, and let the 74-year-old man die with dignity. That my problem is that you destroyed this guy for 26 years, and there's some people like John Dowd that get some kind of
pleasure
from torturing Pete Rose. Pete Rose is a great person. He's not a great person to himself. He hurts his own reputation. but what he did for baseball can never be measured by people that weren't in the game.